But I think a lot of our audience is wondering what's going to happen. You mentioned being in the market 20 years, and including being in the market during the housing crisis, we'll call it.
Yeah.
What's similar? What's different this time around?
I'll start with the differences because, I mean, to me, they're pretty noticeable. So, yeah, having been, in the industry, when we had the big recession in, 2008, 2009, it was, caused by different factors, right? You had a lot bigger kind of global economic things happening. Yeah. You had financial, institutions that were collapsing and going bankrupt. You had car manufacturers that were collapsing and going bankrupt. And a lot of it was driven by the housing market, but it was driven specifically in the mortgage industry. So you had, a lot less regulation over the mortgage industry, a lot more predatory type lending practices that happened. And born out of that was like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which, came in and, slapped all these, big banks on the hand and mortgage lenders for their predatory practices, and still kind of a whole
current closing disclosure is a result of the.
It is, yeah. Instead of the CD, is a byproduct of CFPB. And so there was, it was a little bit more, for the lack of a better analogy, the Wild West at that time, because there really just wasn't a whole lot of regulation on what was happening. In 2004, 5, 6, financial markets were booming. People want, banks want to lend money. They just want, they're just, throwing it out, making it rain. And, we had a big demographic of people that were, looking to get into homes. And this wasn't just locally here. I mean, this was obviously a national thing. It hit really hard in some of the big metropolitan markets, thinking of, like Miami and Las Vegas and Phoenix and area, obviously California. So that was, that kind of bubble was built up on, a house of cards, for the lack of a better way to put it.
A lender told me, we were giving loans to people who had no business getting a loan.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm like, why did you give them? Well, that's what everybody did.
Well, they were called no-doc loans. Yeah. I mean, you almost didn't even, all you really had to do is prove that you could breathe. But there was no oversight of, any qualifications to get one. And that was the whole subprime market.
It's so fascinating comparing to now.
It's,
getting a loan is not always pleasant.
Right. They say you have to give up your firstborn, right, to get a loan. I think it's calmed down some. I think when we were, as a country, when we were first coming out of that crisis and seeing some recovery, in the early 2010s, there was an extra emphasis on making sure that things were being done right. So it was really challenging at that point to get a mortgage. And of course, a lot of those rules and regulations are still in place, but there's been some loosening of those.
Pendulum kind of goes both ways.
Yeah. So that's a little bit of a difference. I mean, similarity wise, I think, I would just say demand is similar because at the time there was a lot of demand for housing. That's not really changed.
So pre-bubble or post-bubble?
Well, it's like pre-bubble, right? So the things that led up to that led up to the massive growth we'd had and kind of collapse was a lot of demand. And that demand, while it may have stagnated for a little bit, I don't think it really ever went away. It just kind of paused for a lot of people.
People still need to live places somewhere.
They still need somewhere to live, right? And so, we had a lot of foreclosures, and those were getting, the demand, those people were getting opportunities there to get into homes at less affordable, more affordable prices. Yeah. The demand now is pretty intense as well. But the difference is that, we're coming out of kind of an unprecedented, last 24 months, almost 3 years.
You mean it's not normal to sell your house in one weekend?
Correct.
For 20% over what you think it's worth?
Correct. Well, and just the factors are different, right? So the factors this time, we'll start first and foremost with just the pandemic, right? Well, so that shuts down, the country as a whole almost, for the better part of a minimum, 8 to 10 weeks, we'll say at the beginning. Yeah. And so from a housing perspective, everybody starts working from home, they pause on what they want to do or what they thought they were going to do. We can't move right now. We can't even have anybody come into our house. We can't go look at houses. And so the demand subsides again. Yeah. But then things start to reopen. There's no inventory because no homes were coming on the market. Demand skyrockets, interest rates plummet even further, population growth in North Texas continues. And
it's like the perfect storm.
You had a perfect storm of factors that created this intense market we had for the last 2 years. And those factors weren't kind of fake. They were real things
Right.
that happened.
The pandemic changed people's preference for housing.
Correct.
People kind of got asset rich during the pandemic,
Absolutely.
too, which was really
Yeah.
counterintuitive to me. I would have expected the opposite to happen.
Well, people were flush with cash and
Yeah.
market's doing fantastic,
Right.
right? And so I've always kind of looked to the luxury market as a leading indicator of what, I call the general market is going to do.
Yeah.
And so the luxury market, because typically people who have, I'm not saying general market people don't have cash, but when you're in the luxury market, a lot of those people, there's more cash
lot
there.
more cash.
And they'll typically put it in places that feel secure. And real estate historically has been that. So you start to see the luxury market kind of pick up and kind of go crazy, post-pandemic. The general market will follow, and there's a lot more opportunity there because it's a higher dense, population of people.